Good evening, everyone. Welcome to WISE San Francisco Bay Area's second virtual event. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Looks like we've already got a number of people in the chat, so please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're joining us from. If you're a member of a WISE chapter, please let us know which one. And just to have a fun thing going on in the chat, I would love to hear what sports thing everybody has found during this shelter in place. Something new, maybe a fun athlete platform where they're putting out some cool content. I know I'm personally completely obsessed with Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird's Instagram show every Saturday. Probably my favorite thing I think about shelter in place right now. Great, I'm seeing people come on. Hello, everyone. Again, please comment, ask questions, share anything you've liked hearing the whole time. We'll collect questions and ask them at the end of Kristen and Patty. Great. Okay, we're just gonna give it another minute as I see everybody coming in. Hello, yay, lots of San Francisco Bay Area chapter ladies, so good to see all of you. Oh, we've got someone from LA. Fantastic. I love it. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Oh, somebody from Alabama. Awesome. Very cool to see. And Chicago. Hello, Chicago. Wonderful. All right. Well, it's 5:31, so let's get this this show started. Again, welcome to. Oops, sorry. Let me click some stuff. So we are using a new platform called StreamYard, so please bear with me. This is my first time going live with it, so if there's any little hiccups, I apologize in advance. But again, welcome to our WISE SF Bay Area second virtual event, Know Your Worth and Ask for What You Deserve with Kristen Gambetta and Patty Hubbard. My name is Megan Harity. I am the event chair for our WISE chapter. We have been amazed by the response to this event, so thank you all for joining us. Thank you for registering. It's been great to see so many attendees from around the country and different WISE chapters. Since those of us you'll see tonight can't connect with you in person, we're going to do virtual cards, and I will drop our LinkedIn into the chat. So I'll do mine right now. Please connect with us to ask about WISE SF Bay Area. Please feel free to connect with Kristen and Patty to chat with them about oh, I just got an error, so hopefully the links are going to work in the chat. If not, you all know how to find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So please, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us for questions, comments. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see. Oh, yeah, sorry, folks. I am getting a little bit of an error, so I'll keep trying with the links. Please connect with us on social media. Our hashtag is down. Let's see if I can do it in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. It's the same or similar on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We've got some hashtags up there, so please share what you're learning on your preferred social media channel. Tonight, we are going to match donations that were made via the Eventbrite link. And we're going to match everything donated to WIST, Women in Sports Tech. Let me put their site up on the screen. This was chosen by Patty and Kristen. The Eventbrite link will be open until 5:30 tomorrow, so please donate tonight, donate tomorrow. Again, we will match whatever's donated. I will try to put the link in the comments. Let me give it one more try. Everybody cross your fingers this works. Yay, it worked. Okay, wonderful. So please check out their website and donate on your own if that's available to you. I definitely understand these are not times we can all do that. So we appreciate you just supporting us and them if you can. We will have a live Q&A at the end of the discussion. If you would like to join, please follow the invite that I will drop into the chat towards the end, just before we finish up. We will only have time for a few people, so I apologize in advance if we can't get to you. But again, please find us, Kristen and Patty specifically, obviously, on LinkedIn, their Twitter or their Instagram, which we will put up, and feel free to ask any follow-up questions. Just the live in-person questions will be first come, first serve. Again, I'll drop that link into the chat towards the end of the discussion. If you are going to join live, please make sure before you do so to close Facebook or YouTube, as there will be interference and we won't be able to hear you. So again, just make sure to close Facebook and YouTube before you click the link to join us. Okay, we've got 76 people watching us, so thank you, everybody. It's great seeing everybody. Yeah, a lot of The Last Dance. That does not surprise me. I'm seeing a lot of that as your favorite sports thing. So not surprised. Good one. And it's so great seeing more people from around the country. Lots of new Wise Raleigh. That's really cool to see. So great. Keep introducing yourself. Keep telling us where you're from. Keep sharing your favorite sports moment during the shelter in place or shelter at home time. Great to see everybody. So let's get started though. We'll jump right into it. We are very lucky to have Patty and Kristen with us tonight. About a month ago, we featured Kristen in our Get to Know Wise campaign, which we're doing every Wednesday. And she mentioned wanting to support women as they negotiated new roles, salaries, and compensation, something she had struggled with early in her career. Patty was the perfect person to discuss this topic with Kristen, both as Kristen's mentor and due to Patty's significant leadership experience. So again, we're very excited to have these ladies with us this evening. Let's bring them on to share their experience. So first, and sorry, I got to get everything here ready to go. So first, I'm going to bring Patty on. A warm welcome to Patty. Hello, Patty.
Hi, everyone.
Patty, who happens to be a founding member of our WISE chapter, brings nearly 25 years of experience in the fields of brand, sports, and entertainment marketing to her executive leadership role at Brand Forward. As one of the co-founders of Brand Forward, the company provides the perfect forum to bring together Patty's experience and passion for brand strategy, mentorship, and knowledge of the sports industry. And let me put up Patty's information. And guys, I'm going to give this LinkedIn thing one more try. I'm going to try to drop that into the comments. Again. Oh, fantastic. It worked that time. Great. All right. Okay. And let's bring on Kristen. A warm welcome to Kristen. Hello, Kristen.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar names in the chat, and it's great to see y'all, or kind of see y'all.
Virtually see each other, right? And everybody, if you're saying, Megan, you're putting this stuff up too fast, I will put all these prompts for their social media handles up again. So don't worry, you'll see it again. Okay, introduce Kristen. Kristen has more than 15 years of brand marketing experience with a focus on developing impactful partnerships that leverage fan loyalty to build brand engagement. Her role as Senior Director of Sports and Entertainment at leading e-commerce company Rakuten. Kristen oversees partnerships with global sports and entertainment brands like the NBA Golden State Warriors and NBA All-Star Stephen Curry and the Spartan Race. And let's see if I can drop Kristen's LinkedIn in there as well. Fantastic. All right, ladies, I will let you take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Megan. And Patty, to reiterate what Megan said, it is just so cool to be able to sit in this conversation with you. I have such a vivid memory of my first WISE event a month after moving to the Bay Area, and you just welcomed me and took me under your wing. And I'm so excited that I get to share this conversation with you and with the rest of the women that have joined. So first, I really want to make sure that we take a second to acknowledge there was a lot of different questions around the current environment. And really want to take a second to acknowledge that many people in our community, the sports and entertainment industry has been hit so hard in so many different ways. And you really could feel that when we were reviewing the questions. We can feel the deep impact that this has had, and we will be dedicating a portion of our conversation to address some of the questions we received on this topic, which is a tough topic to navigate right now. We're all going through it in different ways. And I just wanted to kind of start with that to let you guys know that we heard you, and we will be kind of dovetailing into that at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
So for no further ado, to kick us off, we really will be starting with kind of some of our personal stories and framing the conversation with why this is important to us. So I want to start with a question for Patty. Mm-hmm. Patty, can you share a bit about your personal journey of knowing and fighting for your worth and why this topic is important to you?
Absolutely. First off, I wanted to say thank you to WISE Bay Area, and WISE specifically has been such a huge part of my career journey. I was a member back in New York and was a big part of getting the chapter started here in the Bay Area. And, we all haven't had this sort of career path of like, there's no bumps in the road. And to reiterate Kristen's point, this is one of those bumps. And I have largely spent the better part of my career in sports and entertainment and the agency world. And, I have countless friends who are dealing with so many challenges right now and sort of the unknown of what the next year looks like. And so, like Kristen said, we're going to hopefully just, focus more on the positive tonight, but also just share a lot of kind of how we've worked through some of our challenges in our career and hopefully inspire some of you to kind of really use this time to self-reflect and use it as an opportunity to move forward. And so couldn't find a better person to chat with tonight, Kristen. So happy and it's sort of, this is something we do often. And it's so exciting to be able to do this with a couple hundred friends tonight. So thank you all for joining us. So to answer Kristen's question specifically around my career journey and something that, I've learned along the way, and, because we're all in an industry that is, ever changing and fast paced, and, I have found myself moving cities and finding new opportunities. I know, Kristen, you moved from Houston to San Francisco, and, and finding those opportunities when you move and finding those opportunities when you're in an industry that's certainly not dull and always has, with that becomes challenges and opportunities. And, specifically, there were a couple of times in my career where, I sort of was just more happy to be there and happy for the opportunity and maybe neglected to really take advantage of the opportunity and leverage that I did have. And specifically, probably was underpaid, probably under-resourced at times. But more importantly, didn't really look at the long view of those opportunities to understand, 2 different times the companies were acquired, right? So there was a opportunity where I could have been involved and benefited from that long-term, having a piece or having equity or having, some kind of bonus if something like that happened, and I didn't negotiate those things. And I think because we're in a space that is very innovative and you can be sort of at the front end of some of these sort of new ideas, I went through it twice and I felt sort of like, wow, there's a certain percentage of the team or these companies that I'm involved with that are benefiting greatly from this sale of the company. And third time's a charm. I finally, and the third time around, did benefit from a sale. And something that I would advise to many of you, if you're going to be in a startup atmosphere and if you're going to help build something, that you look at that long-term play in addition to the short-term rewards, right? So I wasn't going to allow myself to miss out on the third time around.
And I'm sure so many of us can relate to that. And I know some of what I'll share a little later definitely parallels some of that. But I think this really leads me to the next question. And I think a lot about what I've learned from you over the last, I guess it's been 5 years now. But you've talked to me a lot about the role of confidence and believing in your own self-worth relating to this topic. So much of it is around mindset. What advice do you have for women to fearlessly believe in themselves and what they're worth?
Yeah, I think, having gone through and have had several jobs where, again, it's very fast paced and you find yourself another year has gone by and maybe you're raising a family, maybe you are dealing with a family member. And I think as someone who has gone through it, you often find yourself making excuses, right? Or saying, I'm too busy, or I don't have time for that, or I'm going to put that off to, whatever, next time. And so it's something that I've really focused on, at least for myself in the last 5 years, and for a lot of the clients that we work with, is that in order to have that confidence and to order to have that negotiating power, you have to spend time on yourself, right? So we spend so much time for the companies we work for the brands we're developing, for maybe our clients. And, we often put ourselves last. And, working at Brand Forward with the athletes that we work with, it's taught me to really understand you have leverage now, and you should be taking advantage of the leverage you have now and the networks you've built, and really understanding your self-worth and the value that you create every day. Because I've been working so much on that for other people, I am now have taught myself I need to do that for myself too.
Right. Oftentimes we put ourselves last, like you said. I think
Yeah.
that's something I really, really relate to as well. And I think that if you're not putting the time into yourself, your mindset isn't there, and you maybe accept things you shouldn't. And I really, I know on a personal level, like having you as a mentor, I'm sure people know Zaylene on this call as a friend and mentor, and Gabby Turner. When I moved here to the Bay Area, it was really the first time that I had female mentors. That is, and it is unique. We do have uniquely female experiences. And about, oh goodness, I want to say it was like 2.5, 3 years ago now, just to share a personal anecdote, confidence was something I was really struggling with. I kind of went through some different challenges at the role I was in at that time, and let it really beat me down. And talk about putting yourself last. Like, I couldn't really see my own worth through everything that I was going through, and really started letting others define me. And it's kind of been a yo-yo throughout my career, where I'm very strong, very confident, and then I kind of have these mini confidence crises. And I think what I really want to reinforce here is, when you have those moments, like, we're here talking to you about this, but like, we have those moments too. My career sadly has been defined by some of those.
Yeah.
And lean on the people in your network to help lift you up when you can't see for yourself. And then ultimately, the more reinforcement you get, you start to believe, like, I'm worth what I'm asking for.
Right. Well, talk about that, Kristen, because I think having known you and know a little bit about, I talked about my journey. We all have pivotal moments, right? Like, I've probably had 3 that I specifically remember where I was like, damn, I didn't believe in myself. I was just happy to be there. And I didn't really dig deeper and ask the right questions, or put the work in advance to know what I should be asking for. Right. So talk a little bit about one of your personal experiences for the group.
Yeah, I think one of the most pivotal ones for me, and for those of you, I'm sure there are people that aren't familiar with me on this call. So I actually started on the team side in this industry, working for a soccer team in Houston, Texas. Shout out to Houston. And there's definitely inherent to team sports and working in a organization is this culture around, you should just be grateful to be here. So one, you start in that type of environment, and I completely undervalued myself right out of the gates. So I started from behind. And I always sort of knew that, but I didn't really know the extent of it until 9 years later, when I was leaving. And it was probably a week before I was moving to the Bay Area. And I want to say my last week with the team, I found out kind of haphazardly that a male colleague of mine who started the same week was making $15,000 to $20,000 more than me. And it was like a gut punch. Similar levels, different scopes, but I would argue now, any day of the week, that similar responsibilities. At the time, I probably wouldn't have. But it woke me up.
Yeah.
It was like, I just remember feeling in that moment, like, I don't want to feel like this again, every step of my career. And then it was like, I backlogged during those 9 years, like ooh, I could have fought harder for myself here. I fought for my team. I fought for my team to get a commission structure, and didn't fight for myself to get the same structure.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Do you think you didn't have the right person internally, looking out for you? Or you didn't feel like you were supported in that conversation? Like what?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely had a few key, what I would call more sponsors internally throughout my tenure there. One of which was really pivotal in giving me the chance as a director at like 27 years old. And really, he believed in me and saw the potential. I would say, though, too, I kind of just accepted what he talked to me about in terms of salary. And looking back on that, that's actually one of the conversations. I put so much trust in him that I would go back and do differently and probably challenge that salary.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we both were college athletes, and you're used to being part of a team, right? So you're coming out of that mindset to a job.
Totally.
And my challenge was, it's part of the team. Like we're going to hit our goals, and I'm going to take care of the people who work for me and make sure the clients are okay, right? It's somewhat of that teamwork, depending on what your role was as an athlete. You sort of assume that role in business too, right? Like I'm a team player and I'm going to do this. I'm going to assume that. And that can lead to some pitfalls, right? Because you're not also balancing yourself in that model.
Right, exactly. And I think so much of it goes back to kind of one of the first things you said about making sure you make time for yourself.
Right.
Culturally, there's so much that kind of reinforces us, whether it's the team side, whether some of it is inherent to gender roles that we're all trying to rip apart and change, but some of it's still there, right?
Yeah.
We take care of each other.
Yeah. And so much of what we're sort of doing is surviving sometimes the week, right? Like surviving the month, or, maybe looking for, and it's okay. Like you're looking forward to the summer. I can maybe have some downtime. Like we're sort of living, I don't know, quarter to quarter in some cases, or year to year. And, a lot of what, I do in my work and around, like, how do you really focus on you and your value, right? Like in your value specific to your career, which can also relate to you personally, but that equation of, what we do, what I do with people on a daily basis is really thinking about strategically past that short term, right? Like you should be looking at the long-term strategy around you just as much as you do in the short term, right? And I know that's really hard to do, and to be able to find the time to do that.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So, and so much of this does play into what you do in your day now. So I love talking about this topic with you. So really diving into how can we also got a lot of questions around, like, how do you really know your value? How do you know your worth? So how can we avoid these types of pitfalls you and I just shared that we've made? What would you do differently to calculate your value if you could go back?
Yeah, part of it is what we'd like to say, not to use too much jargon, but it's your personal brand playbook, right? So, just because you're not a professional athlete or you're not an influencer doesn't mean you can't have a brand, right? Like we all have a brand. We may just look, our brand may look differently than a Steph Curry per se, but we have relationships, we have communities, we have ways that we show up online, right? We're probably all on social media, and part of being able to be confident in that is also understanding your value, right? And understanding, what motivates you, what you're passionate about. And at the core of it is understanding what we're good at and maybe what we're not good at, right? So really bringing out the strengths of what you're good at really helps you define your personal brand. And really it's almost like you have to take a step back and understand, okay, what drives me every day? What do people come to me for? Like, Kristen, what can I help you with? And what do I help other people consistently in? And what am I good at? How do I communicate every day? Like, what are my strengths there? And so we put people through, and what we do every day is we put people through a process that we all should be doing, right? And part of what we look at is there's 4 steps in building a brand. And the first thing that we all should be doing is thinking about our narrative, our story. Like, how are we here today? Like, how did we get here today in our careers? Whether it was, you're younger in your career or maybe later in your career, we still have a way that we got here. And so part of how we kind of craft that narrative or that story is really taking a step back. And, obviously we're in challenging times right now. We're in the middle of this, pandemic, and some of us maybe have more time, maybe some have less. But I think a lot of us are being more reflective, right? We're being reflective about what's important. We're being reflective about where we want to spend our time. And for me, that's an opportunity to really sit down and be like, how did I get to where I'm at today? And just start writing that down and start really kind of crafting your story. From there, you can build on the other blocks of, who's my team? Like, Kristen, you have been amazing in forming a team, right? Like, as you came to San Francisco and you're like, I want to reach out to Patty and Zaylene and Gabby, and I'm gonna form my team around me, and they're all gonna kind of help me bring different things to the table that's going to help you build your network and build your community, and really help you at the end of this process is really about how you share yourself out there. And I have seen what you've done over the last couple of years at Rakuten, and you said, yes, it's a new job, but it's a new you about how you're going to put yourself out there and which areas of the industry and where you're passionate about. So I think you're a great example of someone who's is putting this to practice and putting yourself out there in sometimes uncomfortable positions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think too, like, once a lot of this, I remember going through a little bit of, so when I moved out here, I moved without a job, for love. It worked out. You try to with that.
Jimmy, are you there?
Here, out there. And I think when I first moved here and I was trying to switch from the team side to the brand side, I really started to abandon such a key part of my own personal story. I started to abandon that I was an athlete and that I loved sports, because I was kind of getting this, I felt like I was getting put in a box, and all people could see me for was sports. But what I didn't realize is, no, like, F that. That is core to who I am.
Yeah.
And I think going back to the importance of kind of writing your story and really narrowing in on what makes you you.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got, I really did the work to pull myself out of that rut a few years ago, and really take a different, more confident approach. And it really starts, I wouldn't have done, I was talking to you about this when we were prepping. There's no way in hell I would have been talking about this 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This topic,
Yeah.
Totally. I wouldn't have been vulnerable. And now it's like, wait, even my mistakes are an important part of my story to share.
Yeah.
Well, because now that's strength.
Yeah. Well, and I think let's talk about that, because that was the big transition for you to Rakuten. And I was there with you when you were sort of deciding and you were sort of going into those conversations. And a little bit it was, a little bit what I talked about the process, but it was also about, does this jump in my career, meet my objectives? Does it align with my mission? Am I going to be doing the things I like doing? Which is often, obviously you have your pros and cons of the columns of what you go through. And I think, it really was, it was a big move for you. And part of that was you were going to that probably more confident than you were on the team side, right? So talk a little bit about that experience of going in and to Rakuten and what that was like.
Yeah, one, like, I went into it with a totally different mindset. I was like a different version of myself. And to a certain extent, my mindset was, I have nothing to lose. My previous brand had started to fold my department, but they were trying to find a place for me. And I knew they would take good care of me. I also knew that I didn't just want to be, I remember having these conversations, like, maybe you just be comfortable for a while. And I'm like, it doesn't feel right either. Just kind of coast. A few people told me, like, maybe just coast for a little bit. And I'm like, I think I still want to, I'm in a place where I kind of really want to be challenged and learn, and was afraid if I stayed that while I would have stability, I wouldn't necessarily be learning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at the opportunity at Rakuten, it was a totally different opportunity on paper than what I knew it could be. So it required a leap of faith as well. And I went into it with kind of just this totally different mindset and attitude of, I have nothing to lose.
Right.
And I felt a little, for the original job role, they were going to hire 2 people. It ended up being 1 at a higher level.
Yep.
But I was like, why not? And it was really the time I had that why not attitude as well.
Right.
I think we all kind of fall into this trap of, well, I don't know, it's not quite right, and I don't know, and it's like, this looks interesting enough. Why not? Why not have a conversation? And then it was like, oh, this is going to be totally different than what they put in the job description in like the best of ways, that it's going to be really challenging, and I can really take this and make it what I want and build something here.
Exactly. Well, that was what I was going to say. I think that was something we talked about. Like, you inherently, you have that competitive drive, and part of this was coming at this from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? Like coming in for something that was pretty brand new to the US and a brand that was really looking to, and in 1 year, I mean, the brand awareness has gone up so considerably higher because of the sports work that, you know, the team has done and you have done. So really what I think you did effectively is in your negotiation was, look, I know I'm coming in somewhat at the ground floor, and something that we talked about was, okay, I'll be in at 100%, but I also want more back end, right? Like we said, okay, let's negotiate more of these things so that you can be part of the success that you knew confidently you were going to help create. Right. So that was a little bit of difference of your mindset of like, okay, I can work with you, but let's also understand, like, if I'm going to put the time and energy into it, you've learned that you're going to go over and above, that you're going to have, you know, rewards in that level. And so that was something I was really proud of you. You said, you know what, not that you had, you know, of course you were going in with like, I can stay where I'm at, but I have this, but you negotiated more on the back end that you probably would have before. Because
that's an important piece that I left out. So thank you for talking. This was the first time at, you know, I don't know, 34, 35 years old. It was right around my birthday. That I countered. I never countered an offer that I had received, even when, you know, and mind you, I spent the majority of first part of my career at one place, but even that I didn't, as I moved up, I didn't counter and really think through, hey, that probably wasn't enough that they gave me for that promotion. Maybe that title doesn't match that, you know? So it was really also good for me to get over that fear of like pleasing. Like I'm such a, like I love, you know, making people happy. I love community. And I think sometimes that serves, that can be a weakness in a place of, you just kind of want to be that team player, right?
Well, and part of that and part of it is what we often talk about, like what makes you unique, right? That's you as your brand. And you went to Rakuten with like, here's my unique selling proposition to you. Here's what I bring, you know, and you combined your team and you combined this experience, and you said, here's how I'm different, and here's how I'm going to help, you know, be a part of the back end success. And I think that was a huge stride for any of us to think that way, right? Like you know, they're expecting you to negotiate. You know, their first offer is never the offer that you're hopefully going to take. And if they say, you know, there's a bunch of tactics they can use to say, well, this is the number. Well, it's never the number. You should always be going back and be creative about, there's also things like work-life balance based on what's important to you, right? Like working from home on Fridays, or which we all know, like working from home is going to go a lot different moving forward from coming out of this. But there's things, there's things that are more important to you that might be someone else. And that's part of what has to work for you in your negotiation, and taking it literally like, this is what it is. We should never do that. We should never be selling our service short in that conversation.
Right. I agree. And I think it's being fearless, because it's like, it's a little scary to go back and ask for that, but it's unapologetic and not, I do remember one of the times when I was on the team side very early in my career, probably 4 years into my career, asking for a raise, but sandwiching it with, I needed it to pay like my rent or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I was like justifying it when really it was, I was worth it. I should have just been asking for that to level myself up appropriately.
Yeah.
But I felt the need to justify that here's why I'm asking for this raise.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
was so, and which was so, like, I think when I countered at this, and kind of going back to more present day in this role, when I countered at this role, I didn't sandwich it with anything. I didn't apologize for asking for what I thought I was worth. Now, did I get exactly what I wanted?
Right.
No, I totally didn't get exactly
Right.
what I wanted, but I netted out slightly better than where I started, and then where the negotiation
I remember
started.
that.
And
well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the most, some of the more common mistakes, right? Let's talk about at least what you're seeing and, what I'm seeing out there in regards to some of those negotiation tactics. And for you, it sounds like it's just not negotiating and saying, like, taking people from their word, right? Is there anything else that sort of sticks out in your mind?
Not negotiating is like the biggest one.
Yeah.
But I think the second one that I kind of touched on is
Yeah.
it's like wrapped in an apology.
Yeah.
An apology or a justification, and we just don't need to do that.
I know.
I need to justify that I need to send my kid to private school, or I need to do this. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're worth it, and you just have an uncomfortable, like, letting it hang moment.
Yeah. Well, and I could say, like, having been at the other end of it, having run an agency for
Right. I was just gonna,
so many years, is that and dealing with all ages, right? And I think so much of it is that personal approach that goes wrong. Like, I think putting the personal and emotional side of these conversations need to be put aside, and really approach it more of, like, what I was saying earlier about who you are personally and why your value is what your value is, and approaching it from a business perspective, because what you're offering is different than someone else. And I often had people come to me and say, I deserve this opportunity, me. And it's not a business conversation. It's, you should be approaching it from the standpoint of knowing who you're talking to, right? Knowing your audience, to know, okay, Patty, I know you're running this agency and you have business development goals and you have, this over here. And so when someone came to me and said, I feel like I'm not only, contributing to my job, I'm creating to the culture of this agency, right? Like, I am someone who is there for the celebrations. I'm helping create a good vibe in the office. I am, also the first one to volunteer if something comes up, or, I'm coming to work on time. It's like those little things that sort of add up to the conversation versus it just being like, I did my job, and, like, there's some intangible things that mean more to leadership and to someone at a more senior level than you might expect, right? It's like those little things that sort of keep the office growing and the culture healthy. And those were the conversations that I really enjoyed.
So what are a few of those intangible, like, I think you mentioned a few of those, but, like, if you were to identify, like, what are some of the intangibles that maybe people wouldn't think to mention?
Yeah. Because I know we have a lot of people on here who probably are from agencies or, teams. I think it varies a little bit just based on the sort of the vertical of the business that you're in. But from an agency perspective, what I has always loved to, like, observe versus here, like, because when you're in an op, you can notice these things, is that, this person is setting a good example for others, right? Like, they're being a natural leader to their peers. They're helping others, which may sound strange, but it's, you don't see that all the time. And then I would say that it's, not comparing yourself to others. Like, it was always like, well, I'm doing that job just like that person. And I think that's a really tough way to start a conversation negotiation, because
I've done that too. That's a mistake.
Yeah. And I think we probably all have, right? Like, I think it's really hard. Like, that person has that versus that. And it goes a little bit back to your conversation, and that was horrible that that gentleman was paid 20 grand more. And, but I think approaching it more like, well, here's what I'm bringing to the table every day, and here's what I'm doing to increase business, and making it more of that versus, again, like the personal, and that person's doing that. Like, it just puts people automatically on like the defense of, now I don't really want to have that conversation. So it's not, you're not selling yourself in a way, it's like you don't have your elevator pitch. You're not presenting yourself in a way where you have to sell yourself, right? And it's about you, not everyone around you.
Yeah. So I want to go back, because I think some of this you've touched on, but I think there's also some, when we were prepping for this conversation, some good nuggets that will come out of this question for you as well.
Yeah.
What do you think the initial approach should be? The initial approach should be that you're ready and prepared for this tough conversation, because you kind of feel like what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Because it's a little uncomfortable, right?
Right.
So how do you think, how would you recommend people even kind of get ready to approach a conversation like this?
Well, I think it's really doing the brand work. Like, I think, that's what I call it, but I think it's really sort of that personal discovery of, because the outcome of that is like, here's what I stand for. This is who I am. This is how I'm unique, right? Which allows you to kind of head into a negotiation of like, here are my strengths. It's a very positive conversation. And here's how I intersect, like what we say to when we're working in the athlete world, when they're trying to work with a brand, is how do you intersect? As you're a brand, this company's a brand, where do you intersect in values? Like, what are your motivators? What's your brand DNA? And like, I think you don't have to go in and be like, here's my DNA and this is how I connect, but it's more about knowing, because what that leads you to is the right way to approach it, and it leads you to the right messages of how you're approaching it, versus, again, it's in a positive way of how you intersect, versus it's, okay, this is me, but because when you show how you intersect and how you can complement each other is how the business is going to ultimately grow, and how you're going to grow with them and help them succeed. And that's what most leaders want to hear, how you're going to help them and the company, right? And again, it's shifting that narrative a little bit of kind of you waiting for them to tell you how great you are.
Right. Exactly. I love that. And I think that's so important. Okay. Flipping ahead, something that there was a few good questions on, and I know I only want to talk about it briefly, but titles.
Yeah. Yep.
This is a hot topic.
It is a hot topic.
And why or why not?
I understand, having run an agency and run a company, I understand the function of titles. I understand from like an internal perspective, right? Like I tried all different types of experiments. Like, we don't need them, we need them. And I would say at the end of it, there's an internal function of understanding what department you're in and kind of who reports to you. And there's sort of the organizational function of it. And then there's also the external function of people from the outside need to know what level you're at. Like, are they talking to the right level person? Is there someone above you? Like, I get the intangibles of that. And to me, that's more of a business function of a title. For me, the idea of a title can also constrict us in how we share ourselves externally, right? So just because you have that title doesn't mean you can't tell your story in a different way or the way that you want to, right? Like the idea that you're gonna, and I'm sure we're all guilty of this, like, oh no, I need to update my LinkedIn because I may be looking for a new job. Like the idea is like on your LinkedIn, as an example, like your title of what you have now should not be your headline. Like that is not you. It is what you're doing as a function for a company that's you happen to be working for. And so we can all kind of think about it from that perspective. And and I know, Kristen, you've kind of looked at your headline and I've looked at my headline. It should be who you are inherently and what you want to be doing. And the way that you kind of look at that in regards to like your title, and you think about that about section in the LinkedIn, instead of that being your job description or your title, it should be the way that we frame it is, how you got where you are is in where you want to go. Right. So there's again, going back to the story of where you come from, and it's okay to be aspirational there too, because people will find you and connect with you because of maybe aspirationally where you want to be in 10 years, right? It's sort of already thinking ahead where what I'm doing now is part of the function, but I also want to be here. And so there's a way to kind of take that title and that job description and really craft it the way you want to. Like, don't let that restrict you.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say, and I've shared this with Patty and probably several people on the call, but part of my personal story is not only kind of always feeling like I was a little bit behind until more recently, but in titles as well.
Yeah.
On the team side, they tend to give you higher titles faster. Brand side is kind of the opposite. And when I was starting to look for roles, when I was at my previous brand, I had a recruiter flat out tell me, like, if you weren't referred to me, you would have never made it into the stack. Solely based on your title, you wouldn't have made it in.
Yeah.
So I will say that Anna had a moment where I probably could have fought for a better title there.
Yep. Didn't. Well, that lends itself to the value of making sure you have your the right network, because the right network around you who understands you will be a better asset than, probably someone only looking at title. Maybe that's not the right fit for you.
Exactly.
Right?
And that was being like everything for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is crazy when you think about it. That for some people it's that black and white, but I love the but use your network to, get that referral that kind of still puts you into the stack.
Well, they tell your story better than probably you, right? Because they know they can do that on your behalf. And I did say, especially in the Bay Area, is that titles vary by companies so much. Like for a tech company, the titles vary so much from an agency versus. I always found it somewhat baffling of what a vice president was here versus there. And that's my own personal opinion on that it's somewhat all over the place.
It is, agreed. All right, we're getting our 5-minute alert. So I want to move into current environment. There's a million, as I'm sure you guys can tell, Patty and I could talk for hours. So current environment. So Patty really wanted to kind of put this one over to you.
Yeah. I think I think we're all struggling mental health wise. Let's just be honest. I think these are not easy times. We're unfortunately in an industry, if most of us are in sports, entertainment, agency, it's the hardest hit, one of the hardest hit industries, probably easily. And I would say that it would be so easy to say, take the negative route and just, sort of go down that rabbit hole. And all I would say is that this community, this WISE community, and the community that I've surrounded myself with has certainly helped sort of pull me out of these times in my career where I just felt, scared and nervous about what was next. And I do know there's an awful lot of people on this chat that would be open and helpful to each other. And I would more than ever, it's really going to be important to rely on this network of people and the network that we have built around WISE. So there's that. And then there's also the opportunity of, we have some time again to be self-reflective. So what do we want to use is, and part of the athletes that I'm working with right now, guess what? They're sitting around with so much time and not seeing what they're doing and the chances they're taking and the risks they're taking and how they're putting themselves out there has truly been inspiring to me to say, you know what, they're motivated, that motivates me. And that's sort of that day-to-day of trying something new and also putting a little bit more time in yourself during this time period, if you can allow yourself to do that. And if you can't do it by yourself, because one of the hardest things to do is be self-reflective of yourself, is ask a friend, ask someone on this, someone on this chat, because I guarantee we're all kind of feeling the same right now.
Yeah. And then this was another question that we got that's a really tough question to answer. So in the COVID era, how do you recommend having conversations surrounding career growth and advancements when companies are going through budget cuts and furloughs?
Yeah, I ran an agency through 2008, so I was on the sort of the other end of people asking, and what I can tell you is what I was received well by me and the people around me in leadership was and understanding the sensitivity of the situation, right? A lot of these companies and brands are, and you know whether or not they're being genuine or not, right? Like some companies are just making 20% cuts because they feel like it's an opportunity to kind of clean house, right? So there's that. And then there's really are truly companies who are trying to be responsible for the long term and need to make these cuts. And it's the type of business that you're in. The way that I would approach it is that I would say, like, you're in for the long haul, you're in as a team player. You want to help them get out of this on the other end and even stronger, and be innovative about how you're going to contribute in that way, whether it is internally through the culture of things or whether it's, you have an idea over here. I don't think it's the right time to be asking for raises and bonuses and those things. I think I think we're in a window right now that's unprecedented. And I think really it should be more about how you're helping them, to be honest. And I know that might be hard, but I think that's what leadership wants to hear right now, and knowing that you're in it with them.
Mm-hmm. And that is tough. And when we were going back and forth on that, it's like, oh, that's so tough. And we're telling everyone to go and fight for what they're worth. And then
Yeah, but I think you have to be sensitive to what's happening, right? Like, it's just the reality of what we're in, and again, maybe it's an opportunity to say, like, you're just feeling like there is more out there, and you want to contribute to helping people on the front line. Like, maybe this is an opportunity for you to kind of assess your passions, right? Like, if you're feeling like this truly a job right now, and you're feeling like the world needs something else, and you need something else. Maybe there's an opportunity to kind of start exploring and spending a little time thinking what else is out there. And, there's little pieces of the world and business that are going to be shining lights coming out of this. And maybe you want to be a part of that too.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Megan, I know we were going to take some Q&A, so I'm just mindful of time here. We
have a lot of comments on the side too, so.
Otherwise, we can keep rolling.
Yeah.
You guys are getting a look into like a Patty and Kristen breakfast here.
Exactly. Or wine, yes.
Or wine, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's been wonderful. No, thank you so much. We've already got one lovely lady in our queue to ask a question. So I'll bring, if you guys are ready, I'll bring her in.
Yeah. I feel like I have some good news here with them popping in.
Oh, I like that. John Krasinski. Yeah. And then I've compiled a couple of questions we've been getting in the chat. I don't know if you guys have been able to keep up with that. And let me just take this stuff off so that we can bring Dominique in. All right, Dominique, we're going to bring you in. So before I do, make sure you got Facebook and YouTube closed. Dominique, welcome.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you both.
Yeah. Dominique, tell us where you're from first.
Los Angeles.
Yay, well, welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was so timely. So I was really excited about this. I have been struggling for a little bit in my new role because I came from I was approached specifically by the agency who I'm working for, as well as the client who I am representing, because I was freelancing, and they were like, you are exactly who we want for this role. So I was told for a couple months that there was a certain salary that I requested that I believe I very much deserve. And they were like, we're going to do this. And it took them a couple months to even give me the job. When they offered me the job, the salary was literally like $50K lower than what I had requested. But, my work started to get a little bit slower on the freelance side. And I really believe in, the opportunity that I have. So I was like, I want to take this. And ever since I took it, I feel that I'm overperforming. I mean, I manage our client, which is the MBPA. And I also, oversee kind of everything from production to creative development. And I keep taking on more, but I've been there for 6 months and the conversation hasn't been had. And I'm very nervous to have it because anytime I've tried to approach my boss about it, he's not really good with talking about these things. But I feel it's to the point now where it's affecting my passion towards my work. It's a job that I really love, but it just isn't adding up that there was that much of a disparity between my salary. And, I think for my own mental health, especially now because we're busier, I have to have this conversation, and I'm really scared to have it.
Yeah. And how is their business doing overall? Is the business healthy and doing well? And
Yeah. I mean, I've closed 3 branded content deals during quarantine.
yeah.
So, it's been good. I think, it's interesting because my role sits so much between branded content and also the development of original content. So in quarantine alone, I've developed 5 shows and sold 3 pieces of content, and it's never even been a pat on the back. It's just like, okay. And then I see that we're trying to hire other people. So I know that there is money there.
Yeah.
I'm fearful, sorry to interrupt, but I think my biggest fear is that because I didn't counter when I accepted that, I'm wondering if I put myself in a position to not come back to, bring up what I really had asked for at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I can answer this, Kristen. I think, one, I think you're being taken advantage of. So there's that. Even though you feel like you kind of missed your window of negotiation, you haven't, right? Like there's always an opportunity to go back, especially in light of what we were just talking about, COVID. If the overall business is doing well and there's success and you've proven yourself, to me, there's no reason for you to keep going. I know the branded content space and original content, especially in the space they're at, is something that's growing and there's opportunities out there. And I think for you, you should start probably looking at other avenues so that you can feel like you go in the conversation where you have nothing to lose. Going back to Kristen's point of like, the more leverage you have to say, you might have a couple more opportunities for your own self, mental health, to say like, there's other things out there, and just doing what you're doing, but also start to pursue some other options is what I would do.
Yeah. And I would just add to like, start to pursue the other options, like Patty said, and something that, I feel like I referenced like 4 different times where I'm like, I wish I could go back and do this differently. Some of what I originally asked for, I got a year later at my current role. Mm-hmm. Like, it was still top of mind, and I used performance to help drive that conversation, right? Mm-hmm. I was taking on a bigger scope, and that helped. And what I would say is, it is never too late. I feel like I'm talking to myself here too. Like, it is never too late to go back in and ask, especially when you're hitting the point where it's impacting your mental health, because then you're just going to get so unhappy. And to think of creative ways of, if the conversation turns into a hard no, what's like kind of something you could fall back to? Could you ask for it? I don't know if you're on a commission structure, but if you're out bringing in new business and new deals, like commission is an easy way to like, okay, you have revenue coming in. I want to be paid off of that if you can't make up this salary difference, which I mean, maybe not as direct as that, but
definitely. And I did negotiate that when I started. So that was why I did accept that, because I said, if I'm in new business, but even what's coming in isn't meeting that salary. And I think another thing that really struck my mind today is I'm also bringing in relationships, which I think that there's a value to relationships too, because, it's different athletes, it's different, production partners. So, that is also a value that I'm trying to leverage as well. I kind of write down each day what I would say, but I do agree I should probably try to get another offer. So I'm getting everything, updated right now. But I think if I don't have the conversation, I'm nervous that I'm just going to kind of plummet.
Yeah. And I think it's when you find, like Kristen and I actually talked about this as one of the questions, when do you know it's time to leave? And I think if you feel like every day is largely negative, that's not good for you. And even if it takes another 6 months or another year to kind of find your next step, like it can take a while. The good news is that your portfolio is growing and you're doing great work, and that's always going to help you in creating your brand and what you're offering, right? So that's the positive side of that. And I know your work, Dominique, you do an amazing job. So they're lucky to have you.
Thank you. Well, this was helpful. I mean, again, this was the exact type of conversation I was looking for. And I respect you both a lot. So Patty, you'll probably be getting my resume, updated resume at some point. So.
Good. I'm happy to have it. You're amazing. So
No, thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dominique, for joining us live. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Well, ladies, we don't have anybody else yet wanting to come live, but I've got some questions queued up from that folks have put into the chat. So let's start with, and I apologize in advance if I get anybody's last name or names wrong, from Megan Abeck here in San Francisco. How do you combat pleasing everyone with being told you need to step in and do more for others in the company outside of your job duties and being asked to do more with less?
Kristen, I'll let you answer that.
Pleasing tendencies are, I mean, it's like a constant work in progress for me in my professional and personal life. I think it's so hard with like not automatically just going into that team player mentality, like what Patty mentioned earlier. But I think from a work standpoint, you really can start to use. I really appreciate when people, and I know I've got a few of you guys on, thanks for joining. And people on my teams, if I'm overloading them, that they're honest with me about that. Because the last thing I want is to overload people to the point that they're going to leave sooner.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of when you're being asked to step in, to do more and more outside your duties with less, when it becomes a consistent pattern, that can lead to burnout.
Yeah.
And what I would say is like, raise your hand, have an open, honest conversation with your manager. That like, here's what's on my plate. Because sometimes too, like, they might not have, sometimes if we're not being told exactly what someone's working on, like we may not know as a manager. Right. So it's important to raise your hand and go, here's everything like I'm working on. I actually really don't have the bandwidth of this. What would you recommend? Either I can move something off my plate, and that's fine, or I can't take this on. And I think you have to be unafraid again to show up and say that you can't take something on, which is also a really scary conversation to have. But fully encourage, kind of be fearless and unafraid to have that type of conversation.
And I would say be proactive in that too. Like instead of, it sounds like you're on the reactive side of the conversation. Like it's okay to say, okay, these two things over here, I'm not growing in anymore. I'll take something else on, but I want it to be this. Right? Like be more proactive in your ask versus them always telling you what you need to be doing more of.
Right.
Good. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so since we've hit 6:30, I'm just going to do one more question because I do want to make sure we address people's questions, and then we'll wrap up. Alexandra Zilberman from WISE Chapter in New York asked, how do you overcome a situation where you work for a company that doesn't allow you to negotiate on your own behalf? She says only her boss can speak for her.
Oh, geez.
Any questions there?
That's hard.
That was a tough one, guys. I pulled that one.
Meaning the boss is talking to HR. Like who's the end game to that?
Alexandra, if you're there, feel free to jump in. But yeah, it says my boss is the only one who can speak on my behalf. So I guess I would assume to HR.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a red flag, right? Because it's not. For so many reasons. And I would say if that is the case, then you need to have everything documented, right? Like everything needs to be written down and, dates and all of that to understand. At some point you will get a different audience, I would hope. And if you don't, then that's, and you don't feel like you're being taken care of, then that you have every right to be asking for contact with HR.
Okay.
Yeah. And she responded and said, I can never negotiate for myself for raises or promotions. Yeah, I would agree that feels like a red flag. Unless your boss is like such an amazing advocate that, I've in a previous role advocated for two of my employees that when I took over management of them, I was like, they are grossly underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
But I took that on as their advocate, not as kind of this feels nope. Yeah. This feels like a block. This feels like it falls into that category of like, where do I start? Where start documenting everything and really thinking about moving on.
Yeah. Yep. We're finding
Great.
another advocate.
Well, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. That sucks.
It does.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. You know what? And I lied. I'm going to ask one other thing. Are there any resources that Cece Hain from San Francisco, who we know is a good friend of Ariel, our president, she asked, are there any resources you recommend to get an idea of what you should be making in a role, like Glassdoor or something? Is there anything that you guys use?
We actually we had this as a topic that we didn't fully get to, more in the context of there's challenges when you look across. Looking for salaries when you work for a team are very different than when we work for a brand, where they're a little bit more accessible on something like Glassdoor, or an agency. So,
and it depends on the size of the agency and your responsibilities, because the titles are all changing. You know, I'd say that the best thing you can do is ask peers and ask people in this network to help you with that, because it can depend on the market as well. Like the Bay Area is going to be different than New York and LA, and so I think it's really tapping into your network for help on that front.
Yeah, and that's what when I was on the team side, there was no information anywhere, and I don't know, maybe that's changed, and if it has, great.
Yeah. I would say there's a ton of resources out there right now, and this is a great thing to kind of wrap up, is that around having diversity and females in your workplace, right? So there's a ton of resources that I'm sure Megan and we all have in regard, having female leadership, having females on your board, having females as part of a team. Like in the last 5 years, there's been more information out there on that front than I've ever seen. And that's pretty amazing. That in itself should be something as part of your messaging of ensuring, especially working from an agency and working in sports. We all know, and I've experienced that I was the only female executive on teams and oftentimes. So, and I really feel like, you don't have, your voice is only being heard by one person instead of 10. So.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And I'll just, Katrina from Toronto had a question. Katrina, feel free to reach out to Kristen or Patty to ask your question directly if you'd like. We definitely want to make sure your concerns get answered. Kristen, Patty, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. This was wonderful.
And Megan, you mentioned you might have an HR seminar or something more like focused on some of the HR questions that we saw.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that up, Patty. We are hoping to have something soon, working with kind of any avenue or the different avenues that we have available to us to get that content out to you guys. So stay tuned.
This is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you guys for the opportunity. Like I said a few years ago, like I never would have been speaking on this topic.
Yeah.
I just really, and it was such an honor to do it with Wise, who really has helped my career as I made a huge life transition to the Bay Area, and obviously with Patty. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
We love that you guys were a mentor-mentee kind of relationship, and you met with Wise. So that's wonderful having you guys. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
All right, I'm going to bring Ariel, our president, on here in just a moment. Thank you again for questions. And if we didn't get to, I apologize. Please reach out to us. I've said it before. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, whether it's Kristen, Patty, myself, Ariel, or any of the board members. We want to help, especially in these times. Again, make sure to reach out to us on social media. Tell everybody how much you loved our event today. Use the hashtags, tag us. We love to see it. Please stay tuned for our next virtual event, which will be hopefully the last week in May or the first week in June. It'll be networking happy hour for members only, specifically geared towards those of us that are job searching. The event will, I already said that. It'll be last week or first week of June. Check your emails, watch the site, check our social media. Also, we are doing that Get to Know Wise campaign. Again, that's how we found this topic with Kristen. Again, hashtag Get to Know Wise. If you would like to be featured, reach out to us. If you know somebody you'd like to nominate, again, please reach out to us. sorry, that was my timer. But we'd love to hear from anybody who wants to be part of that. And let me bring Ariel in. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Megan. This was such a wonderful event, such seamless, beautiful technology that I know other chapters are starting to use. And I'm just so glad that this is not only available for over 100 people who tuned in live, but will be available on our YouTube channel for anyone who missed it or wants to revisit. I'll be really quick and just wrapping us up. So just want to remind everyone, if you are not already a WISE member, we would love to have you. Megan will share in the chat the link to sign up. Annual dues, which are just a one-time pretty low payment, cover events like this, cover member-only exclusive events. They cover our networking events, and most importantly, they cover our WISE Within annual mentorship program, where you can be paired with someone in the industry in the Bay Area community. And it's a year-long program that really helps forge a lifelong connection, as you could see with Patty and Kristen. Please visit our site. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Anyone on our board, social media, all of that, we're available. We want to be a resource during this crazy time, and we're here to help. So hope to see you at our event soon. And thanks again. Have a great night.